Hello and welcome. We are going through the biggest storylines of the major qualifier, or at least the ones I find the most interesting. I am Elliott aizyesque Griffiths, as you can see in the bottom left of your screen, for Rush B, and I'm going to talk you through the biggest storylines to go into Friday's major qualifier. First up, Vitality in need of a dominant performance. I know that sounds a bit weird. They are the number 2 team in the world, and the last couple of months they've been pretty insatiable, but last time out, IEM Chicago, little bit uninspiring. Most notably against Heroic. So they actually did lose 2-0 to Heroic in the first game and then beat them 2-1 as they played them again in the group stage. But losing 2-0 to Heroic is a pretty not a shocking result for Vitality, but certainly one they would be wanting to avoid, obviously. But I think it said a lot, especially after the ESEA debacle where they were buying Bisons and all that. There was a lot of debate about whether or not it was disrespectful, whether or not they should be allowed to do it, whatever. Um, they need to show again the level we know they have, because otherwise there are going to be questions. Has this ESEA thing, like, has it like stopped their momentum? Has it changed the way they play? All that sort of stuff. I don't personally think it has, but if they have a poor performance here, or they're not as convincing as they normally would be, you would start to have an issue, right? Um, they're maybe not used to the pressure of being the best team at the event. I don't think there's any debate as to them being the best team going into the major qualifier. They are the number 2 team in the world. NRG are the next highest ranked team at the event at number 6. Um, whether or not they're used to that pressure is, I mean, it seems like a moot point, right? It doesn't seem like it should matter too much, but you have to remember Zoiwu is still really, really young. Um, So it's not completely inconceivable that he might have an issue with being the pressure of being the best player at the event, with being the best team at the event. And it is a major after all. It's a big deal. Here we just have so that was the first game against Heroic that they lost 2-0. This is why I was saying, looked a bit off. Zaiwu the 63 ADR and negative 3 KD. Alex, Apex and RP. I mean, Apex going minus 19 would be a big worry. And it wasn't even like, I guess Stown went off 92 ADR and plus 18. It's kind of you say, oh, okay, he just went off, he destroyed us, whatever. But when they all went positive and you all went negative by MBK, you had a good game. It's a bit of an issue. And the return of that, Zaiwu did go plus 24, so it's not so much of an issue. But I mean, it was still pretty close, right? And you can point to Tag just having an off game, and think, maybe that could have been different if Tag had turned up and you would have been going out losing twice to Heroic. Obviously, that's subjective because the same thing happened with Zaiwu in the first game, but it is something you might need to be worried about as Vitality. They then played Liquid and got destroyed, but I mean that doesn't mean anything. Liquid will destroy anyone at the moment. So the second storyline we have is the battle for top 10. So there's a lot of teams between like number 5 and number 20. G2 and NRG are in the top 10 at 8th and 6th respectively. But I don't think G2 are a solid top 10 team. I think they're a good team. I do think G2 are pretty good, and I think they were underrated for a little bit. They've been having some good results in qualifiers and lower tier lands. Then when they went to a decent tournament, I can't remember which one it was, and they had an alright placing. They beat some decent teams, and you're like, okay, this G2 team is somewhat legitimate. Amanek has been a really good addition to them. He's a more stable third player or second player, because Shox is pretty up and down. And then I think Jax is an incredibly talented player as well. NRG, number 6, they seem to just always be sitting around number 6. They seem to sort of be the gateway between being a top team and being a decent team. Are you better than NRG? NRG are like the benchmark for being a good team in my eyes. And that's why them being here is important to me, because they're actually the second best team at the event, which doesn't happen very often for them. Mouse, North, and Crazy are between 10th and 20th. I think Mouse are 10th. Mouse have a real chance to really break into that top 10, 5 potentially if they really do well at this major qualifier and then the subsequent major. Um, and if any of these teams slip up, they really like start to lose ground on being top 10 and proving that you can be one of the best teams in the world. North have been improving and then maybe having like, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back with North. Slow progress, but they've shown before they can beat Vitality in best of threes and best of ones. Um, so they definitely North definitely have it in their locker to be one of the best teams in the world. It's just finding that consistency, and this is a huge event for North. And you know if they do well and one of G2 or NIG kind of screw up a little bit, there's a chance they break into the top 10. They overtake these teams. Crazy are another team who used to be Valiance, obviously, um, who've been sort of flitting around the top 10 for a while. And the major gives them a real, like a tangible opportunity to cement their place as one of the best teams in the world. They certainly have the talent with Esperanto and Hunter. They have the firepower. There are maybe concerns over their style of play and whether or not it's consistent enough, but they've constantly traded maps with Mouse and North and good teams, and they can definitely, again, if any of these teams slip up, the others aren't going to, and that makes for a really good battle for top 10, as I put it. And then even behind those is Fours. I think they're around 22nd in the world at the moment. Their improvement has been rapid. They've been smashing teams left, right, and centre in qualifiers for events. G2 know a lot about Fours. Um, I'm not sure how much North will know about them or NIG, but Fours are not a team you can take lightly. They're a scary, scary team, um, and I think people are aware of how good Fours are. There aren't too many people sleeping on Fours. Um, but again, you have to be right at the top of your game for this major qualifier. A team like Fours, a team like Crazy, a team like even Greyhound will overtake you and they will slip through. Next point, the AWPing power at this event is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I was looking through these teams thinking how many of these teams like their best player is an AWP, and it is a lot of them. In the top sort of teams there, you've got Zywoo, arguably the best AWPer in the world. It's probably simple, but I mean it's pretty close, right? Kenny S. I mean you don't need to say too much about Kenny S. Everyone knows what he can do and the issues he's had recently, but he's looked pretty solid in the last couple of months for G2. Um, and he can definitely, if he shows up, I mean, it's just another top AWPer at the event. Voxic is, I mean, obviously brilliant. I've been a huge Voxic fan for a while now. He finally got his chance on a top team at Mouse, and he's looked really good so far. He's going to have to be really, really good to beat the rest of the AWPers of this event, because I say, Cirque, probably another one who's probably a top 10 AWP player. I'm not as high on Cirque as I am on the others, or as other people are on Cirque. I think mechanically he's brilliant, but I think he has a lot of positional issues. But that doesn't mean he can't be one of the better AWP players in the world. And on his day, he is insatiable. He's unstoppable. And if he shows up again, like if him and Kenny S show up, there's going to be some serious AWP duels going on at this event. Even the lower seeded teams, so like Hellraisers are the second lowest seeded team at the event, and they have Oscar. I'm well known as a guy who doesn't really rate Oscar that highly, but he's clearly talented and he's clearly a good player for like the second worst team of the event. Like he's clearly good enough for that. KNG is absolutely brilliant. I don't know how many of you watched the Americas minor. He absolutely stomped that minor. He was destructive. There was a round. It was against Luminosity, I believe, where they were in a 3 versus 5 at like 14-14. He dropped out of Palace and no-scoped somebody on Mirage A site. Dropped out of Palace and no-scoped somebody, ran through the site, killed somebody else. He ended up with an ace, just like running around the site with his AWP. And it started with like jumping out of Palace and no-scoping somebody. It was revolting. And then even like Avangar, they're coming up a little bit late, but they have Jame, who's quite obviously a talented AWPer, if a frustrating one to watch. Ramzik, Dream Eaters. Definitely shouldn't sleep on him. He's or is it? No, sorry, it's Ramzik at Simon Gaming. My bad. But Ramzik is a really quality player. Shazam, I mean, everyone knows I like Shazam. Everyone knows I rate him, but I do think he's a very, very good AWP versus AWP sniper. He's very good at winning AWP duels, and I think that should help him at this event because there are so many good AWPers. If you can neutralize a Voxic or a Kenny S or a Jane, you stand a really good chance of beating them because they are generally they're better players. Exapower at fours as well is I think it was pointed out by somebody at HLTV. Exapower is one of the heaviest like AWP leaning players. He just doesn't use rifles whatsoever. Nearly all of his kills are with the AWP, and he's seriously good with it as well. So there's a reason he uses it. But he's a bit of a Russian JDM. What does this mean? Well, this means we may see a CT-sided meta at the major qualifier. The AWP is obviously more powerful on the CT side. Players like Shazam, who are good AWP v AWP, actually get a bit of a... Like, they might actually be a bit more... it emboldens their strengths, right? So hopefully we see Shazam pop off a little bit, because I think he's a really fun player to watch. It means that the economy management is going to be incredibly important for a lot of these teams, especially fours, as Exapower just doesn't really use rifles whatsoever. James is especially good at managing his own economy, as the meme suggests. It also means that teams like North, where Yugi is their AWPer and he's not really their star player, it means they're going to have a very interesting dichotomy compared to the other teams because they're going to be very rifle heavy, and it's going to be about how they play against these AWPs with just 5 rifles or 4 rifles, and they try and set Yugi up to kill him. They are one of very few teams there whose best player isn't their AWPer. I think Dream Eaters, their best player is an AWPer. Greyhound, Tyloo don't really have a recognised AWPer. So there are those teams do exist, but they're generally a little bit rarer here. So it's more about the AWPing power than the rifling power at this event. I would imagine. I could be entirely wrong. The best team in the world doesn't have a star AWPer, but that doesn't seem to be trickling down. North have, I'm only joking. Liquid obviously have Nitro as their AWPer, who isn't their best player. Nitro is a very good player. He's transformed into a very good AWPer actually, but he isn't their best player. That you'd have to give that to Twists or Nafly or something like that. You could argue Elige actually. Now that I think about it, it's probably Elige. But they don't have a star AWPer, and they are the best team in the world. But everyone else around them seems to be picking up these god tier AWPers. I think that's really interesting. Usually the meta follows the best team in the world, but I guess everyone's still catching up to the Astralis meta of just letting Device do a lot of the work on the CT side. So I guess maybe maybe next major, when people, if especially if Liquid win, there'll be a lot. Maybe there'll be fewer teams with a star AWPer. We'll see. I just thought that was an interesting one. That Liquid, the best team in the world, don't have a star AWPer, and it seems everybody else does. The case for the Asian minor. Now, I'm somebody who is stuck up for the idea of the CIS and the Asian minors and the Americas minor because I like the variety of teams coming in. I like having new faces and finding out whether these teams can hack it. The Asian minor is one that has traditionally struggled to find teams that will make it through and actually be a threat at real events. But Greyhound have absolutely smashed it domestically recently. They're winning a lot of games in Australia. They're not really dropping maps. Again, you can only beat what's in front of you, but it isn't the most impressive competition. During the minor, they had games where they went down, notably against Tyloo. I think twice they were behind quite significantly, came back and won. And they showed a serious resilience and depth of firepower. I think in the final map it was Malta who dropped. I think he dropped 60 frags over 2 maps or something, and he was absolutely brilliant. And he's not a player that is normally there to hard carry for Tyloo. for Greyhound. So I think it's good for them to have that depth and to have another player who can come in and be and like step up when they need him. Um, Whether or not he'll be able to do that against better teams is what we need to see. But this is a chance for the Asia Minor to really make a splash. Greyhound, I think, are actually pretty underrated coming into this event, um, and there is a chance for them to make a splash. Tyloo, another team who have often made it through the Asian Minor and struggle to really convert that into anything. They got a firepower upgrade by bringing in Freeman. Not sure that was the thing they really needed to improve on to make it to the next level. But at some point, if you have enough firepower, you're going to be a good team. Um, I, I do truly believe that. I do believe, obviously, there is strategy, there is like a tactical side to the game. But if you have just 5 players who are really good, you're gonna be half decent. Like, it's almost impossible to have 5 good players and actually be bad. Um, so that, yeah, as I say, there's a lot of doubt over the Asia Minor, and they need to prove their right to be there. To start, maybe just sort of stop a few of these complaints, and it's a really good opportunity for these teams to actually improve. I love watching Tyloo, so I really do hope they do well. Um, I think they're one of the most fun teams to watch. Um, Greyhounds, obviously, I'm never quite sure what to expect, but their results recently have been really, really good. I think unfortunately they are losing Urcast after the major due to visa issues, which is a real shame for them because they, as I say, they seem to have sort of come into some form and figured out what their team is supposed to be and how to play. And to lose that would be frustrating, but it'd be a really nice way to go out if they did make legend status or get through the major qualifier. Like, that'd be huge for them, and I think that would be nice to see. Slump busting, Avanga and HR. If you're in a slump, I can't be out. You know where I'm going with that, right? Avanga were massively underrated going into the last major qualifier. I was very vocal about this, and they did get shafted a little bit by the seeding. Um, they were really heavily underrated going to the last major qualifier. They'd had some great results. They were beating decent teams and playing at a really solid level. They've had roster changes recently. I think Crizzen went out and Fitch went out. Both aggressive pieces for their team. Players who could open up sites or at least make space for their more passive players. And since losing them, I think they bought in Sanji and I can't remember the other player they bought in. But since these roster changes, they've been disappointing. They've been losing games that before they were just smashing. They've not been qualifying for events. They've not been doing as well as they were. Now is the time they really need to break the slump, or at least they'll see, okay, this roster isn't working. We'll change again. It's kind of a make or break event for Avanga. They still have Kika, who I think is an exceptional player. And if he goes off, they do have a chance because, as I say, I think Kika is really, really good. James, I'm not particularly high on. He's talented, but his playstyle irks me, and I don't think it's a particularly efficient way to play the game. Hellraisers, on the other hand, since losing Woxic, they replaced it with Oscar, but they also lost a few other players. Brought in Nuki and Lau, and have really been not doing a whole lot since. They've had some really, really poor results. Been unable to qualify for big events. I mean, Hellraisers were a team who were like a lock-in to make like DreamHack Open playoffs or these tier 2 events. Hellraisers would make the playoffs all the time. Recently, they've not been able to do that. They still have Issa, who, as we all know, is an exceptionally talented rifler. They have Oscar as well, who's shown that he has the level to be on a top team. So they do have talent. Laul isn't a terrible player. Nuki's half decent. Angel is an experienced in-game leader who has his spells where he can play the game as well. He's probably a little overrated in the fragging department. He has some very, very poor events as well. But it only takes one good event here to make it through to the next stage of the major qualifier. I know a lot of people are rooting against Hellraisers as well because of the way they sort of bent the rules slightly to get into the they got into the CIS minor. Or so. I can't actually remember what it was. I think they listed Dead Fox, or they were going to list Dead Fox if the roster change rules had changed, something like that. I didn't care too much for the ins and outs of roster change rules, but I know a lot of people are rooting against them and will be happy to see them go out. I personally have them 0 and 3 in my Pick'em challenge, so I wouldn't mind seeing them go out either. CIS minor qualifiers. The teams who qualified from the CIS minor traditionally have done pretty well at major qualifiers. Um, Vegas Squadron are the most obvious example, but there are. I mean, Gambit were a CIS minor team. These teams do tend to do more work than you would expect. I think people always sleep on the CIS minor teams. I thought Windstrike were pretty good going as a last event, and they were very unfortunate not to make it through. Avangar before that. CIS has a lot of talented players. Whether or not they form great teams is up for debate, but there's so many good Russian-speaking players. Don't sleep on Dream Eaters. I mean, for obvious reasons, don't sleep on Dream Eaters because they're Dream Eaters. But also, I think, as I say, CIS teams have a history of massive upsets in the major, and at the CIS minor, that I thought they were really, really solid. They lost games they shouldn't have through, for want of a better word, choking under pressure when they were in the lead. They had a bit of a wobble, and were losing leads that they shouldn't have. But until that point, they looked really, really good. Like solid fundamentals, talented players. I think Crad is a really solid player. Speedak is a decent player. They have talent. They have a style of play that seemed to work for them. I do worry that they might choke a bit under pressure. It's the biggest event they've been at, but I think they are better than people will give them credit for. I think they're actually a better team than Simon, even though Simon beat them to qualify. Simon are a bit of an inconsistent team. Ramzik is really, really good. He's a player you need to be careful of, and he's one who can pop off and really carry them. I'm not sure the rest of the team has enough fragging power really to carry them through. But they only need a few good games to sneak through, a few good maps. Um, I think Dream Eaters are a better shout for a team that can do well here. But we will see. I mean, as I say, CIS minor teams are perennially underrated coming into events. A lot of people have Dream Eaters 0 and 3, and I really think they're going to win a map, at least. I think, I say, people haven't watched them, I don't blame them. I only watched them a little bit at the minor, but I think they're really decent. And I really hope they make a splash at this event, because I always think it's fun to see new teams at the event. So, I think coming into this event, Avangar aren't the best CIS team there, like they were last time. I don't think Hellraisers, if you can class them as CIS, are either. I actually think Dream Eaters are the one most likely to do well from the CIS this time. Whether or not their qualifiers are a completely different beast, there's a lot of great teams here. But I just wanted to go through the storylines I thought were most interesting for the major. I basically covered most teams here as well. Vitality need a big event, as I mentioned. There's a battle for top 10. We have the teams who are slumping in HR and Avangar, the Asian minor teams, the CIS minor teams, and the sheer amount of AWPing power on display of the major qualifier. I've been Elliott, aizyesque Griffiths of Rushby Media. Hope you enjoyed. Tweet me at aizyesque if you did or didn't. Let me know what you would like to see changed, and I thank you very much.